Hi, Ben.
Hey, Carl. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. I like how we tried to start this podcast like three different times right now.
Yeah, well, you tried to start it. I was hesitating.
It happens.
Okay, so there's like a few elephants in the room, as you mentioned before we hit record. So, the audience has been used to a very specific kind of format of Secret Sonics that started in July of 2019, so 4.5 years ago. And today is January 1st, 2024. We're recording on New Year's Day. And due to situations out of my control, life got really intense here in Israel. And I had to kind of step away from the podcast for a little bit. And I realized, anyways, it was kind of time to switch things up. I'd been doing this format for 4.5 years. And what better way to kick myself in the pants to restart it than to bring in a co host? And I was just trying to think about, you know, how can we get this restarted with a co-host that will just make me excited to get on a call? And I was like, we gotta just chat with Carl and see how that flies. So welcome
Oh,
to
shucks.
so welcome, Carl. You're the new co-host.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I feel like I was on, so many episodes already that I kind of already I've been planning for this moment all along.
Is that
Preparing.
was that your real goal? Like back when we first met?
No, but if I want to sound wise and like I could predict the future. I could pretend that it was a
Right.
plan all along. However, it was just honestly a happy little surprise getting that message from you a couple days ago.
Oh yeah. Was it only
And
just a couple days ago? I guess it was like a week ago, maybe. It wasn't long ago.
yeah, and I think during the holidays, especially with young kids, like everything is a blur. And it could have been 3 days ago or 6 months ago, and it all kind of feels the same.
Yes. Um, I'm not celebrating the holidays because I'm Jewish, but I totally understand what you mean because the holidays here, same thing. Um, but yeah, anyways, when things happen with Carl, they move quickly because he's a go getter kind of guy, and so just kind of all pieced it together. We got in a chat I think last week and talked about ways we could maybe do this, and then here we are just going for the first episode. So yeah, do you want to introduce the topic for today's episode?
Yeah. So one of the things that Ben and I both agreed would be a good idea for the first, the inaugural co-host episode would be talking about setting goals. Partially because it's January 1st, 2024, when we're sitting down to record this, but also because we are both in a bit of a turning point in our lives, I think. Not just because of the calendar year, but also just because of things going on in our lives with kids and everything. And I know I've been thinking a lot over the past few months about what this year was going to look like. And a little backstory: I have a 7-year-old, and we also had our second child back in June. So she's just about to turn 7 months. So the first 6 or so months, I knew I was going to be in over my head, just trying to survive. Having a having a newborn was nothing new, but having a newborn with a 7-year-old tornado running around the house was new. So I went into the second half of this year knowing that a lot of the goals that I thought I would be reaching for just were not going to be possible, just with the amount of mental energy and caffeine that my body can handle. So the beginning of 2024 was a bit of a landmark, I think,
Mm,
because it's a time where I feel like we're finally getting into a groove with the baby, and I can start to push business wise a little bit harder again, even though I've taken the past, half of a year more or less at coasting speed. So, new goals and new thoughtful goals are very, very front of mind for me. So, even if it wasn't January 1st, I feel like this would be something I'd love to talk about. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about the topic.
wow, yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm glad that you kind of are settled in to your new role as a dad of two, and you're ready to kind of put a little bit more gas on the in the car again. Foot on the gas, as they say. Um, I feel like I've been coasting Also, for very different reasons, just because of what's been happening here locally, I just have not had the mental bandwidth to think about being proactive basically on anything. And so I've kind of been resting on the things that, were coming in anyways. And I was, yeah, basically I wasn't pushing forward at all for the last few months. But at a certain point, you gotta, move on with your life, and not that you move on, but you have to push things, otherwise you're gonna stagnate. And we actually have a third baby on the way. I can't believe I'm sharing this on the air. Um, and
Yay!
so,
I'm gonna pretend I didn't know that.
yeah,
Congrats.
crazy people. We're about to be outnumbered, and then the financial thing becomes even more important. And so I can't stop now. I got to keep going. Got to double down and get more work and do good work, and have to at least try to be optimistic about the future. And hope that things will work out and things will be good, and I can continue building a good career for myself, and that supports my family and myself, and have a good time doing it. So this is both of us jumping back on the horse to ride again, I guess, and for very different
Yeah.
reasons, and but hopefully good, successful for both of us.
Yeah, exactly. So before you tell me what your goals are, I'm curious, what's the thought process that you have when you're trying to figure out what goals you should even strive for?
That's a really good question. I think I'm trying to like find that inner thing inside of me that says yes, this is stuff you can do and be passionate about and love your life doing. So I think that's like a big part of my driving force. Um, and I think both of us are trying to kind of curate a life where our work supports us, but we also thrive from it at the same time. So it's kind of like this is what gives us, life, so to speak, the music thing, but it also it hopefully enables us to do the things that are outside of that, which are also important. And actually, it's one of the things I've really enjoyed about not really pushing so hard over the last few months has been kind of just like looking around and seeing my life and kind of living in that moment more than focusing on business and the hustle. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of like just trying to like listen to my inner voice and figure out what I can do that's true to me that can also be helpful to others and could also, help push this career thing that we're trying to do forward. So it's kind of I'm trying to cultivate this life. I'm not trying to, get by any means necessary. It has to be at a way that works for me, at a pace that works for me. Happy doing it, not stressed doing it, because we've been doing it long enough that we know that that kind of like hustle mentality can only last for so long. It has to be at a pace that's sustainable for us. So these are kind of things that are going through my mind.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I very, very similar. The idea of it's really difficult, I think, to find work-life balance when you love your life and you love your work. That's kind of the tricky part. And I'm very lucky that I love my life, I love my family, and I also really love what I do, whether it's mixing or business development, whatever I'm doing, like, I just really enjoy it. And that makes it very difficult because I inevitably will make a lot of goals because I have a lot of interests and a lot of passions. And my what I'm assuming is undiagnosed ADHD also doesn't doesn't really help with having way too many big ideas and not enough time or focus or energy to actually complete them. So when I'm trying to figure out what my goals should be, it can become really daunting and actually really difficult for me to say no to my own goals. The things that I do want to achieve because I know that I can't do them all. And maybe I feel like when I was 25 and had the energy to do them all, I didn't have the experience or
Mm,
the willpower, or the structure or whatever you want to call it.
right. That's like the youth is like what's it called? Youth is wasted on the young or something, or
Yeah.
so however that quote goes.
Yeah,
I think
it's
about that a lot, actually.
it's so true. And I all the things that I want to do, I think I could have probably done all of them if I if I knew what I knew now when I was, you know,
Yeah, mid 20s.
15 years younger. Yeah. So because of that, that's one of the hardest things that I'm still struggling with. It's having a lot of ideas, a lot of goals, and trying to figure out which ones I can actually achieve or which are the ones that actually will move the needle for me to have that work life balance, to have a job that fulfills me creatively, that fulfills me like emotionally, and fulfills me financially, so that way I can spend the time and the energy just being a dad, being a husband, being a friend. And I think as I'm getting older, and I think now that we have a second kid, I think it's easier for me to let those non-music things trump the music goals, if that makes sense.
Totally.
I think when we had one kid, or when I got married, it was hard to like to let go of some goals. Then when we had a kid, it was a little bit easier, but still not that easy. And I'm not perfect by any stretch right now. It's not just like, oh, well, clearly I can just compartmentalize between the super important stuff.
Yeah.
I
Not
I can't,
possible. Not possible.
but I think it's getting easier with every year.
Yeah, I think having two kids also for me was an inflection point of like being able to to kind of flip those priorities, because it's just like it didn't matter what I wanted before, just like the necessity of the hour just changed things around, you know.
Yeah.
In so many
Yeah.
ways, my daughter brought me to my knees with like things that I thought I could control and realized I could not. So, you know,
Yep.
and then you let go.
Yeah.
You start to let
Yeah,
go.
you do.
With 2 years of therapy, you start to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's a nice little segue into what are the goals? Or actually, are there any goals that you had on your list that you decided didn't make the cut?
I haven't gotten that far yet, but
Okay.
actually,
That's fair.
but based on what you were saying, I had a question, because it sounds like for you, there's a difficulty, in doing the essentialism thing. You know, the book
Yeah.
Essentialism, where when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and you have to kind of be, very specific about what you choose you want to do or not do. So, what made you choose? Yes, I want to be a co-host of Secret Sonics for 2024. What was the impetus there?
If you want my honest answer,
If you're
this
willing to give
two
it.
yeah, no, no, no. I mean, there's two. I feel like every decision that we make, no matter how pure it is, there's always some sort of trying to think of how to describe this. There's always a bit of a selfish motivation, right? And I like to be very honest about that, because every decision that we make, there's always some amount of selfishness in it. So I think when I go into situations, whether it's for my business or just for fun, like I try to be very conscious of that, because I think being conscious and honest about those motivations enables me to just be a more transparent, honest person, right? So whether it's with myself or with somebody else. So I think the fun thing for me is I love talking to you.
Aw,
And like
thanks, Carl.
and no, I do. I love talking to you, and Ben, I love you, and
Aw.
I want to do whatever I can to to support you and your goals. And when you ask me to be a co-host on this, like, well, duh, like of course I'm going to be, because that sounds great. You know what I mean? Like because I want to support you, and I love having these kind of conversations. And at the same time, there is a selfish side that, like, I love having these conversations. I love talking about this kind of stuff, and having an opportunity to do that where people will actually listen to it. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to want to do
Yeah.
that, And or one thing that I am actively always trying to get better at is to be better in interviews and to be a better public speaker. Just being able to take my time when explaining something and trying to pace myself when I tell stories. And what better way to practice that than by doing it in conversations?
Yes.
So just because this is something that I think is really fun and I want to support you, like, yeah, there are some other benefits to it, and just meeting new people and getting to have hopefully some really interesting conversations that you and I can share with people, whether it's through the podcast itself or through social media, and hopefully it helps people as well in whatever way it does. So there's a lot of reasons why I said yes to doing this.
Awesome.
And one of the goals, one of the goals is to just get more conversations started. One of my main goal for this year is to
Mm.
start over. I want to start over 1,000 conversations with new people,
Wow. That is a lofty goal.
but it's 3 a day, and I usually do that kind of anyway. So if I do just starting 3 conversations a day, not necessarily 3 conversations with potential clients or people that I want to hire me or people that I want to get something out of. Like, it's not that as an intention. Just starting those conversations and meeting people and just not waiting around for my network to build itself.
Hmm.
It's a way of just finding more of my people and doing a podcast especially a podcast that has an audience. Like, this is a perfect way for me to hopefully start more conversations with people and get to know more engineers and producers and artists and just, find more cool people to
Amazing.
make me happier in life because I find
Yeah.
so much joy in that.
Yeah.
So, yes, like I guess calling that a selfish reason is, it's not the same connotation that I think we usually use when we talk about selfishness, but I think that's something that I know I really enjoy, and I love starting conversations. I love meeting new people, and this is a really great way to
Yeah.
kind of, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or kill like 7 birds with 1
Yeah.
stone. Not that this podcast condones bird murder,
No, no.
but yeah,
We try not to. Sometimes they fly into the windshield though, and we can't do anything about it. But
yeah,
um, amazing. I feel like there's a lot to talk about there. Um, but I feel like I should just make a preface. Maybe we should do this at the end of the episode, but I'll just say it now. Like there will be more interviews on Secret Sonics, and hopefully there'll be interviews with 2 co-hosts as opposed to 1 host. Um, and I will say that meeting people through this podcast has been the number one joy of doing this podcast.
mhm,
Um, I can't. It's like unbelievable to me uh, who I've met because of this, and who's introduced me to who, and things that I never dreamed possible happened because of just starting a podcast and starting those conversations. And yeah, definitely a great. I think podcasting is the best thing for starting conversations, for meeting people. It's the best way to, without seeing somebody in a room, it's the best way to get in front of somebody who you want to talk to, and
yeah.
such as you, Carl, and so hopefully there'll be continued conversations moving forward. Awesome.
There will be for sure.
All right. So I feel like you sort of gave me a goal for this year. Uh, do you want to like elaborate on your goal, or should I give you a goal? What do you think is a good way to bounce back and forth?
Hmm. Well, I guess let me kind of put a bow
Great.
on mine, right?
Perfect.
So the goal of starting 1,000 conversations this year with new people, I chose that goal because that's something that I can control. And I know, before this call, before we hit record, Ben, and oh my gosh, erase that, start over. Yep. And I know before we started this episode, we had talked before about the idea of input goals instead of output goals. And the amount of conversations that I at least attempt to start. Maybe I'll say that I want to attempt to start 1,000 conversations with new people, even if they don't respond to me, right? Because I can't control whether or not they respond, but I can control whether or not I try. And so many, every major event in my career has in some way come from me just starting a conversation with somebody that I didn't know yet. And that's like the one constant I think in my career over the past 18 years. Oh, 19 years. It's 2024 now.
We're about to hit
One
two
of
decades, right?
I know it's weird. Yeah, one of the only constants is the fact that me proactively starting conversations with people is what leads to growth and new opportunities and that creative fulfillment that I'm constantly searching for. So that's why setting a fairly lofty goal is, I think, very important because I know not all 1,000 people are going to respond, let alone, like I said, it's not meant to be like, oh, 1,000 potential clients, right? Like, it's not like I'm expecting 1,000 people to all be like, oh, hi, Carl, you seem cool, take my money. That's not at all the point. But knowing that I can send these messages, I think is not only going to help me to prevent the massive ebb and flow of the busy season and the dry season with projects,
Hmm.
but also it's going to inevitably provide me with new perspectives on life, new perspectives on music. And also, I know it's a good habit for me to be able to build and a fairly reasonable habit. Like 3 messages a day is not that bad. And if I fall behind a day, 6 messages in a day, at least for me, is not bad at all. I send so many messages all
Yeah.
the time. And I
Well, we're
know
gonna have
that
to
if
like
I,
get into like the lack of fear that you have in approaching people. Like I feel like it's amazing,
well, I mean, if
or
you
it's
want
just
to
practice.
stop, it's just practice. Yeah. I mean, like, cause like me doing 1,000 this year, like I've probably done 1,000 every year for the past couple years without keeping track of it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the number. But I think if you set yourself a lofty goal like that, but in a manageable way, that instead of saying, I want to have 1,000 messages out by the end of January, it's by the end of the year, knowing that it's 3 a day, knowing that that's some time that I can set aside. I can set aside 10, 15 minutes a day to do that, knowing how beneficial that will be for the long run of my career. I think setting that goal and just doing it and forcing yourself to do it and having some accountability, either if you're good at keeping yourself accountable, great. Or if you have a friend or a peer that wants to do the same sort of thing, getting some accountability there too. But just doing it, because as soon as if you send 3 messages in a month, you are going to be very hyper aware of every single one of those people that you reached out to and whether or not they responded and what they said, right? And you're going to lay in bed at night wondering why didn't they respond? Was it something that I said? Did I say something wrong? Do they not think that I'm worth responding to? Like all these spirals of
Sounds like dating.
self doubt. Yeah, I mean it is, and I guess I don't want to. I want to stop the metaphor there because I'm not saying you should go on Tinder and send 1,000 messages. Not my goal.
Don't,
Um,
yeah, don't sue us for bad advice.
this is the complete opposite of a dating podcast.
Yes,
Let's be very clear about that.
yes,
Um, but
exactly.
but if you do 3 a day for a month, if you do 3 a day for a week, by the time the week's over, you're gonna forget some of them that you sent out. Like you're not gonna be putting them on a pedestal and worrying
Right.
about those responses. And the thing is, if you send 3 a day for a week, it's like 21 messages. Even if 1 or 2 people get back to you, you're going to be excited about the people that got back to you. You're not going to have time to worry about the people that didn't,
Yeah.
And if you are thoughtful with the people that you reach out to and what you say to them, like I usually get like a 40 to 60% like response rate,
That's
just because
great.
I try to say things that matter and show that I care and give them reason to respond, make them feel compelled to respond, as opposed to just, yo, bro, fire song, DM me to collab, like not fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji. There's there's so many good ways to do it, and I've seen how impactful it's been on my career over the past 19 years, and I just want to take this year to be more, I don't want to say intentional about it, but at least more of more consistent with it,
Mm.
and
Also maybe
consciously
more
consistent.
aware. Yeah, more aware of that
Yeah.
this is happening and working. Maybe like almost like a scientist, and you can kind
Yeah.
of like measure how it goes. If you're like
Exactly.
think rather than you're just happen to be doing it, you're just kind of like consistently looking at it, making sure you're doing that amount every day, and you could measure the variables. I haven't
Yeah.
done science in a while, but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Totally.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's my main goal, and it's you know
And it's an input goal.
I and it's an input goal. I could have made when I was asking you about goals that didn't make the cut. Like
Mm,
I had a financial goal that I set, and I had a social media presence goal that I set, and then I realized that really neither of those things are directly actionable. They're both, indirect consequences of actions that I take, right? So I was trying to figure out, well, what action can I take that is most likely to lead me to those
exactly.
to those. So that's why instead of the goal being, oh, I want to make X amount of money this year, or I want to get X amount of social media followers, it's like, no, I'm just going to start these conversations because I know that's whether it's with producers or engineers or artists or plugin companies or press outlets or whoever that is, I know that that is what's going to create those planting those seeds for those relationships, but also to make me even more aware of the what's going on musically, and I might stumble into places that I had no idea even existed because that's happened so many times in my career.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this, but you have your whole like Spotify research system and how you're able to kind of find music that you resonate with, and those are usually the artists that you reach out to. We'll get into that in a future episode.
Yeah,
But I think I'm assuming that's kind of what you're alluding to.
that's part of it. Yeah,
Yeah, part of it.
but
Amazing.
I want to hear about your goals.
All right, my goals. Well, I haven't really started cutting out my goals, and they're not even so crazy. I'll start with my craziest one, which is also a pivot, which we also kind of mentioned as maybe could be a podcast episode talking about pivots. But yeah, I think this is going to be the year that I try to pivot into full time mixing. Um, and it doesn't mean I'm going to stop producing altogether, but I'm going to stop advertising myself as a music producer. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Um, and I still love producing, but producing is kind of like an extreme emotional labor for me. And at this point in my life, as a parent of two kids, and God willing, a third one on the way, I know I don't have the mental capacity to give it my all anymore. It's super. I just don't have it. And being in Israel these last few months has even exacerbated it even more. Um, just my capacity to give that emotional labor. And mixing, I don't have to give that much of an emotional labor thing too. It's still great. It's still fun. It's still artistic. It's still a little bit technical. It's like all those things, but it's not as much of a emotional drain. Meaning, like there's more battery left over for me to give to my family afterwards, and so that's kind of like the number one reason why I'm thinking to try to make this pivot. The other reason is over the last year, I've kind of built up a podcast post production business, which has given me some extra, basically diversified some income revenue streams because of having a family. And I'm not in a music city. There's a lot of reasons for this, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but for me, it's kind of been working, and it's given me space to breathe in the music that I'm working on, to be more selective about what I choose to do work on when it's music. And I've never been happier with the projects that I've been taking on musically than now. So it's kind of like almost because I'm doing a bunch of work that has nothing to do with music, the music stuff that I'm doing has never been more fun, more fulfilling. And so this is kind of trying to take this to the next level, is now that I have a little bit more financial stability to try to really narrow in and focus on what I want to be doing for the time being, which, at least until the kids get a little bit older, I think is going to be mixing. So yeah, that's kind of my goal, but that's not an input goal, right? So
Yeah. So
uh,
what would the input goal, like what would the input be to or what would the various inputs be to get to that
Yeah.
point
I mean, it's
of
very similar input goals to what you were talking about, and it's about increased outreach to bands. You know, finding music that resonates with me and reaching out to artists that I think I could be a good fit for. And, regardless of whether they want to work with me or not, just starting those conversations, kind of like you were talking about. A couple more. Here's just like two more input goals that I thought about off the top of my head was reformatting this podcast. And I think going as far as I did with the interview thing was amazing, but I think it still doesn't show to a potential audience that, hey, like, I want to be mixing your music. And
Mhm.
if it becomes more of a co-hosting situation, this is an opportunity for me to kind of show that I know what I'm talking about, and kind of also put out more social media content that where I'm talking about things that I'm passionate about and how I'm doing it, as opposed to just asking the questions. Um, and yeah, I guess the content was the last one. So it kind of goes all together. So it's kind of reformatting this podcast and then creating more content that kind of shows to a potential audience, hey, this is what I do and this is what I'm passionate about, and what I've been doing for a long time. So yeah, that's kind of my number one goal, and those are some input goals that I'm going to try to do to accomplish that goal this year. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious, and just because I'm a dork and I love this stuff, I'd love to know. I guess like after we finish wrap recording this episode, and when you start to put the input goals into more like specific things to do, like whatever it's the number of outreach messages that you send, or the kind of content that you make, or like the how often you're making content about you know about mixing. Um, yeah, I think it could be good for us in a future episode to maybe revisit it and see what your thoughts have been with
Hmm.
how, like, kind of how that how it shaped up.
Okay. I'm down. And I think
Yeah,
we should.
I want
I
to
think we.
foreshadow this a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've now officially become like accountability buddies for our input goals. Now that you've told me
Yeah.
yours and I've told you mine, we can kind of keep each other posted also via this podcast, and we could keep our audience posted and maybe be a proof of concept of let's say, building relationships and starting conversations as an input goal, and just keeping to our goals basically.
Maybe that could be a little segment,
Mm,
once a month or something. We do
monthly
a
check-in.
check-in, monthly check-in.
That's an interesting idea. I'm down to think about it, and let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could try it. I'm gonna
Cool.
give you like a soft commitment here.
Oh, that's totally
Wait,
fair.
isn't the whole point of this a hard commitment? But yeah, okay. So Carl, do you have any other goals slash input goals that you'd want to share with the audience that you're thinking about for 2024?
Yeah. One that I'm doing. I know this kind of. I never thought I'd talk about this in a podcast, I guess, but one of the non-musical goals that I have. Sorry if you can hear the dog barking in the background. I think she's mad that I'm talking about this. Um, I a couple months ago, I actually started doing Weight Watchers. Weirdly enough, not because I felt like I have a lot of weight to lose, but it was more so because I am an anxiety snacker,
Mm,
and it was less. The direct goal wasn't. You know what? Actually, talk about like input goals and output goals. The way that I use like the Weight Watchers app, it isn't that I had necessarily a goal weight that I was trying to achieve. It was more so that it was a way for me to track everything that I'm eating and making me more
mm.
conscious of what I'm putting in my body. And by doing that, by just focusing on what I was eating and being conscious about it, I lost like 18 pounds, something like that.
Wow, congrats. That's amazing.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah. So the thing is I'm at a point where like I don't feel like I like if I lost a couple pounds, cool, whatever. Like I don't feel like there's a real need for that. But what I found during that time was that when I was conscious about it, I felt better. When when I was more conscious about how much water I was drinking, how much exercise I was getting, how many fruits and vegetables I was eating compared to,
Snickers bars.
peanuts
Yeah.
or Snickers bars and cheese or whatever. I felt better. So that, yeah. So I'm using the Weight Watchers app as an input goal. It's just more so for me to be
Yeah.
conscious of what I'm literally putting in my
Yeah.
body rather than doing it for the purpose of achieving a certain outcome. And if that outcome is, a healthier body, then cool.
Great.
But I think that's great. Yeah. But that's,
Yeah. Your
but like the
wife and your
number
kids will
itself.
thank you for it.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be here. I want to be here a long time.
Yeah. Awesome. Amen to
Yeah.
that. I'm just like what's resonating with me with all the things you're talking about is kind of like this mindful approach. It's like as long as you're mindful and you're tracking things and you're not mindless, you know, it just sets off the brain working in a much better, healthier way and enables you to be more productive in different areas of your life.
Yeah. And I think it forces me to be honest
Mm.
too, which is something that, honest with myself about things. And that's always, I think we all have areas of our life that we have difficulty with that.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for me, like, eating was one of them. So I think this is why it's been so helpful, because it's forcing me to just be honest with myself about, how many times I'm just getting, like, a little half handful of cashews or something from the cabinet, and then you realize, oh, I did that 4 times today. Like, that's too many nuts, Carl.
Yeah, the cashews definitely add up, even though they're yummy.
Yeah, well, they're
Uh,
so good.
I'm with you, man. Okay, amazing. So, one of my goals for this year is to become more financially literate, and not to just kind of keep money in a bank account, and not to just kind of let things happen, and to try to be more conscientious of what I do with money. Um, and because I'm going to need that money as we get older, uh, to pay for things. And yeah, I mean, I'm like, I'm putting into a pension and stuff, but I just don't understand enough about how this whole thing works. And my goal is to learn about like macroeconomics a little bit, um, and actually learn how to invest a little bit better and be smarter. And so, yeah, input goals for that are, maybe finding a financial advisor, booking sessions with experts, and maybe reading some books. Like I wrote down 3 books on the subject. So if I can read 3 books about financial literacy, that could really help me. And who knows what that will do down the road? Because, you know, thinking about like compound, like the older we get, the less time we have for things like compounding interest to work in our favor. So
Yeah.
these are things that I think I need to address now in my mid 30s before it's too late. So that's
Well,
kind
that's
of,
great.
yeah, that's one of my goals this year.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think what's great about that too is that, what your input goal is education and educating yourself.
Right.
And I think the more you know, the more you're going to be inspired to know more.
Yes, that's
So I think
absolutely
that's
true.
really great.
Yeah, and that's true for everything, right? Like once you open that can of worms, or like maybe there's like a little bit of friction and you don't really want to get into something, but then once you start and you start learning and you learn more, then it's like, being on that Wikipedia page and, scroll into the next one, or, like we were looking at each other's you showed me your Descript and how you're using it to edit videos really quickly, or what I was like, because I'm so used to using DAWs, I was like, afraid of a program like Descript, but then you got to just get into it, and all of a sudden you're learning it. It's like learning a new DAW, or learning video editing once you're comfortable with audio, but you're intimidated by it. All these things, once you get going, you realize, oh, it's not so bad. I can figure this out. My brain knows what to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. Do you have any other goals? Should I list off a couple more?
Yeah, let's do a couple more.
All right. All right. So, yeah. I mean, one of my goals is kind of just to kind of continue to be a present spouse and father and not work crazy hours, which I don't now, which is great, and I can't complain. So I want to just keep doing that and not working my butt off. I want to learn I want to try to earn more money because we have a third one on the way, and so that's super important. And that input goals for that might be raising my rates, and again, starting more conversations, finding more clients. And another goal I put down for this year, which is interesting because it hasn't happened in a very long time, is make my own music. Because I feel like it's a part of me that I brushed on the side in an attempt to become a professional as an audio engineer, and I've kind of put my own musical thing, somewhere else. And I want to see if there's anything still there, because a lot of people, when I was making my own music, friends and relatives really resonated with some of it. So I want to see if there's anything there to unpack at this new stage of my life, so let's see what happens. I don't have
Yeah,
input
I
goals
mean,
for that. It could be just, picking up scheduling 1 hour by a piano or a guitar once a week or something, but we'll see.
yeah. And I mean, I'm sure there's more than enough stuff going on in your life the past couple weeks, months, years to be pretty intense inspiration for the music in the first place.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I sort of wrote one song since everything happened here. My wife immediately said to me, "It's like, you got to write music now. Like, you write songs when you're sad. This is your time, And I sort of wrote one thing. Well, we'll see what happens. I don't want to.
Yeah.
This is one I'm not sure I'm going to commit to, but I like the idea of it, at this stage of my life. So we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Which means it's the first one going out the window, but let's hope not.
But you know what? But I think there's something really great about being conscious of that and knowing in advance, like if shit hits the fan and I have no time or mental energy, that these are more important than those, and knowing what the priority list is, like knowing which ones you're going to be okay with letting fall behind because you know that you have others that you don't want to fall behind.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say the pivot for me is the most important thing, and then tied with becoming more financially literate, and kind of everything else is secondary to that. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So 2024. Let's hope it's a good year.
Yeah. It'll be a year.
It'll be a year.
Hopefully it's an entire year.
I saw something on Facebook today. It was really stupid.
Wait, you saw something stupid on Facebook?
Yes. Oh, never have so many expected so little from a new year. Basically, if an asteroid doesn't hit Earth, we're good. Thoughts from aisle 4.
Basically. Yeah, that's not too far off.
But we have to at least try to aspire for more than that. So here's hoping. 2024 should be a good year.
Yeah. Here's hoping we pass the very low bar.
Yes. Let's go way past that very low bar, and let's have a great year. And hopefully the audience will come along for the ride with us. So thanks for listening. That's the name of your podcast. Yes. Maybe you could even give a quick pitch.
Well, it's a thanks for thinking, but thanks for getting my podcast name wrong.
I totally got it wrong.
So thanks for inviting me to be your co-host on Secret Waveforms.
Oh, we're keeping this all in, right?
Oh man. Okay, so let's call it a wrap on this one, because I know we both wanted to talk a little bit more about mixing and what that means for us in 2024, and I think it's a perfect next episode, considering making that pivot to focusing on mixing for you is one of your big goals for the year. So I think this is a perfect time to call this one finished and move on to episode 2.
Excellent. Carl, this was a blast. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you.